Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm talking with Ariel, and we are going to be talking about the topic of integrating plant medicine. The big topic. It's super fun. I love to talk about this. And my name is Jessica Dyer, and I am a somatic therapist and coach and provide integration coaching for plant medicine. Um, and also some medicine ceremony work, um, incorporating somatic work into everything. And yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. Ariel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Ariel. I'm like, what are the main because my business has changed a lot recently, and so I'm still kind of working on the new focus or how to describe it, I should say. But I would say I do healing sessions specifically for spiritually oriented or heart-led entrepreneurs, mostly, and creators who want to create change in the world. And I hold space. I have a community called Dreamweavers for these people. And then I also do healing sessions and I have a monthly healing for dreamers workshop online that I do to heal whatever is blocking you from embodying your full medicine in the world and creating and dreaming what we want for the world. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm really excited for this topic. It's so funny because Jessica and I just caught up a little bit before, and we just could just I already was like, oh, we could be recording this whole thing because we always just have such interesting conversations. And my perspective. And this is something I've wanted to talk about for a long time because, on one hand, I think plant medicine, of course, is so powerful. And I love the idea that we're getting wisdom and medicine directly from source, directly from nature. And, I think obviously there's been a lot of ways that culturally we do it very not the most wise way of doing it, and spending time like actually integrating and what does that look like in a real way, I think is really important because I think that's something that's missing a lot from these communities where I can see there's a lot of, ayahuasca ceremonies happening or mushrooms or peyote or whatever it is, but the communities aren't spending time really doing that hard integration work and that hard shadow work. So then you're not seeing a difference. You're not seeing the difference you want, and then you have to keep going more and more to the plant medicine because you're not, or you keep turning to it, but then you're still not seeing a difference. So yeah, is there anything first, Jessica, you want to talk about or respond to?
I mean, just as you're saying that, I feel like it just brings up the idea of, I feel like it's like talked about so much now of this like healing loop that people can get stuck in of like, oh, I need to heal. So I just keep doing the ceremony or the whatever it is, but you're just sort of stuck in this like I need to heal rather than doing a ceremony, a plant medicine ceremony, doing some kind of healing work, and then being in the here and now, being grounded in what does this actually look like in my life? How do I live my life? How do I take the wisdom, the insight, the learning, the growth, and how do I actually shift showing up differently in my life so I'm actually um, living a healed, whole healed. There's a woman that a teacher I went to a workshop with her yesterday, and she talked about like just living as the holy, whole, and healed woman, versus this like constant loop of I just need to heal, need to heal. And I think we can get caught in that in plant medicine so much. And there can be a real like if we're looking at nervous system work also, right? Like getting out of our window of tolerance and just like getting activated, collapse, right? Plant medicine ceremonies, if we're not doing the work of integrating and actually building our window of tolerance, building what the capacity of what we're holding, we get really caught in that activation collapse nervous system cycle so that we then sort of, it can be almost addicting. Work, oh, well, I need another plant medicine, I need another ceremony to get the high. I'll live in the high and the activation for a while, and then I'm going to collapse. Then I'm going to be in that defeated, hopeless state. Okay, now I need another plant medicine ceremony, right? And so we're not actually doing the work, the integration work, to shift our homeostasis, to shift our daily life. Yeah, so I just want like that's why integration is so important, because integration is where we actually shift how we're showing up in our daily life, shift what things look like, building our tolerance, building what we can hold in our capacity. Um, and so then, if we do go on another plant medicine ceremony, we're coming from a different place where we have integrated, where we're more whole, and then we can glean more wisdom and build. And that's where the intention is not this to get stuck in this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you think about it, I mean, basically what plant medicine is doing is it's a way of accessing intuition, higher knowledge, and I lead a dream interpretation container in New Earth Mystery School with Miriam Hasna. And it's interesting because this idea of like when people are feeling that it's hard they're not having a lot of dreams or they're not remembering their dreams and so on. Something we've talked about is maybe the problem is that you're not recording them and you're not doing anything with them. It's like if I want to
Mhm.
be opening up this intuition, then I need to be doing something with it, or else our guides are
Yeah.
not gonna, and our ancestors are not gonna keep giving us this information, and that's where
Yes.
the depth comes from. And so it's the same with plant medicine. Our plant medicine is giving us wisdom of the things we need to work on. It might even show us specifically how we need to work on them, but then we
Hmm.
have to work on them, and I
Yes.
think that's something that it can feel really good to do plant medicine. Of course, you can get a high from these like spiritual experiences, but like we have to integrate the wholeness is also being in the parts that are the low part, in the parts that
Mhm.
require discipline. And we also need, in my opinion, more well-rounded tools that just doing
Mm.
plant medicine, like if you're just in a plant medicine community and that's the only thing that you're investing in, I really recommend that you bring in other tools of how to work through this integration because shadow work is not easy. Like
Mm.
I personally went on a dieta with Daniela Riojas, and it was lovely. And with that, it was a week and we did ayahuasca 3 times. And that, the amount that I saw was so much. I saw so much that, sorry, I've had something in my throat, like gone stuck in my throat all morning. But the amount that I saw to work on was so much, you know? And so to actually integrate that stuff, I had to have a lot of other tools to work on that really deep shadow work, Like there was maybe one thing that I remember that got healed on the spot, because it took me to a place where I almost drowned, which was crazy when I was a child. That was causing a lot of anxiety. And so I was there in the ceremony and that healed that pretty instantly. But a lot of the other stuff, I have had to really hardcore work on it. I worked with somatic practitioners. I worked with my therapist. I have a pretty strong spiritual practice. So I also was doing, I believe that pretty much every sensitive, intuitive person should do some energy work because I think it's really important and it just really can help, really. It can help you move more quickly through things. But having these other tools are so important to actually integrate because the plant medicine can't be there with you on like a Wednesday night. What are you doing? How are you actually have the nervous system capacity to actually face this shadow, And I think that's where people kind of get addicted to plant medicine because they aren't doing that stuff, So they just want to keep doing more and more, but you're not working with what you've gotten.
100%. It's funny you say, and said this before we got on the call, but I actually know two people who have come to me for integration, and they went to sit with, they were sitting with medicine before seeing me, and the medicine told them they're not going to get any more from them because they're not integrating, they're not putting into practice, they're not using the insight that they've been given to actually make any shifts or grow in their life. And so the medicine's like, no, you're done until you actually start doing the work. And the work is the hard part. For me, medicine journeys have really mostly centered, the healing is really centered around unworthiness and not living from this place of unworthiness. And while that's really a beautiful and challenging thing to experience in ceremony, it's in my daily life that those little shit, like it's sitting in the energy, the love for myself every day? And how am I choosing to show up in every moment? How am I choosing to orient myself every moment? And that takes dedication, it takes work, it takes a ton of somatic work and energy work. Somatic and energy work probably are the two that I go to a lot, you know, my own ritual daily practices, connecting to nature, all of those things, but it takes daily work, and actually being in the life, being in my life, doing the work of, you know, holding the inner child and really when she gets activated and has those patterns that want to repeat of unworthiness, like holding her and shifting. Um, so yeah, it's real. And the beauty of the plant medicine is that it shows us, gives us the insight. Sometimes it heals things that we're not aware of, but it's not asking us to plant medicine isn't asking us to come and just be a passive recipient and then just go about our life and not do anything differently. Plant medicine is asking us to be in relationship and to come and to collaborate with the spirit of the plant to heal, to make these changes. And so that looks like a daily showing up of being in that collaboration, in that relationship. Um, you know, and I think that's where in Western culture we have it's like cultural and just how we approach so many things. And that's part of the difficulty is that we are so accustomed to healing being here, take this pill, just go about your life, don't really change anything. Go to a therapist, complain. I mean, this is coming from a therapist. That therapy is really helpful if you're using it, and it's not always like this, but it can be. We're in the Western medical model, right? Like, go, just complain, vent, and go about your life, but nothing's really changing, right? Because you're just a passive recipient who's just taking um the healing through the pill or the venting, but you're not actually showing up and changing, right? And plant medicine from indigenous perspectives and from the way we're supposed to be engaging is a relationship, is a dynamic space that you show up with your full self, with your integrity, with your um the accountability, right? With your, how are you participating? And it's a give and it's a take. And so you receive from the plant and then you give through your life actions, you give through also offerings and gratitude. But it's, yeah, it's like then walking the walk of being and showing up differently. And then you can sit again and receive and then continue, right? So it's really this fluid reciprocity rather than a passive just heal me kind of experience.
Yeah. I like that idea. The thing that came to mind is like an elder or a grandmother, right? We're learning how would you treat an elder or grandmother, which is, you know, what plant medicine is providing you, your ancestors' wisdom. You know, if they're telling you, hey, you need to do this thing, are you gonna just not do it and then just come up and be
Mhm.
like, tell me more, you know? No,
Mhm.
like you need to respect, there's a level of respect that we have to build with our intuition of respecting the information that we're getting. And that's also how we then can have more access to more stuff. Like I do think that because that was my first time ever doing ayahuasca. And I think that because of where I had been in my healing journey, I don't really remember specifically, but I kind of do think that I was shown a lot. Like I remember kind of comparing to other people. Not that it's a competition, but I think that it's like you get access to things based off of where you are, you know?
Mhm.
Our ancestors, our guides, the plant medicine can sense where we are, you know? And so if you really want to have these beautiful realms that you're going to have access to and parts of yourself, we have to really be with the parts that we don't like about ourselves or the
Mhm.
things that kind of suck to feel, you know? And I talk about this a lot in my healing sessions, but you know, a lot of the times what's going to really change our lives is feeling the core wounds, you know? And
Mhm.
so the plant medicine journey might show us what one of our core wounds are, but if we're coming at plant medicine and our spirituality of wanting to get these highs and not really wanting to feel bad and trying to avoid trying to do anything other than feel bad, you know? We're not able to excavate the trauma that's living in our bodies that's going to help us excavate the core wounds, you know, and when we do that, when we feel those wounds and we feel, I feel like I'm not enough, I feel like I'm not lovable, or whatever it is, those core wounds, I always say they're like the things you wouldn't want to say out loud. You know, you wouldn't want anybody to know about you because we feel shame, we feel awful, you know, it doesn't feel good. But when you feel it at least a little bit, you know, you create structures in your life like a therapist or if or you know, or routine, a spiritual practice that can then give you some space to hold it a little bit each day or however much capacity you have. Those are the things that are really going to transform your life because I'm sure that a lot of the people who are doing plant medicine all the time and aren't doing the integration, their lives aren't changing, you know, and you're wondering, why do I feel so stuck? You know, why I still feel kind of lost deep down. And it's because you're not doing that hard stuff of holding those deeper wounds, you know, and those are the things that are really going to make a difference. So
Yes. Just yes to all of that. Um, and just adding on, it's holding the core wounds, it's holding the depth of what is being brought up, what is being moved through. And then I also just want to add integration can also um like it doesn't it's not also not all of the core wounds. Like there are also ways in which, right, we do receive so much beauty through plant medicine ceremonies. I'm just remembering, so a couple weeks ago I sat in the ceremony and then I had an integration session. And this particular ceremony was like one of those that was like, it was nice, right? It was nice. I didn't feel like it was like, it was just nice until I had the integration. And it was in my integration where I was really processing and talking through, you know, and somatically working through what had come up that I realized, oh no, it was actually really profound. But this particular ceremony was really gentle. You know, some ceremonies can kind of like knock you over the head with what you're being presented with. And this one just happened to be very gentle. And it was really illustrative to me in the integration session of like, wow. And that's what I've been like really asking for in my life lately also is really more gentleness, more ease and in my growth path. And so it was like the medicine ceremony was exactly what I want. Like I came out of it being like, oh, it was fine. It was, you know. But the reality is it was really beautiful and there was a lot of really deep learning for me. It was just gentle. And my integration now is okay, how am I showing up and allowing that to be? How can gentle and soft and easeful be good enough? And be like, oh, actually, I get to rest and I get to settle in. Oh, this feels good and easeful. And that part of me that's like, you know, but it needs to be hard. I need to suffer to like actually have it be worth it. And like, actually, that part, I see you and you get to relax right now. You actually get to enjoy this life too. And that's also good. And so just wanted to say that sometimes shadow work, like sometimes our shadows and our patterns are like we talked about the being like keeping us in these loops, right? And I can tend to have that. And so this was like illuminating, like actually you get to also enjoy. And so, but my point is integration I wouldn't have gotten to that awareness of that this was actually really what I needed if I didn't have that integration session. I would have just been continuing on and been like, oh, yeah, it was fine. But it was through my integration that I actually got to actually glean the insight and the wisdom from it. And then, okay, how am I showing up in my life?
I love that. Yeah, it's also the rewiring, you know, and I know
Yes.
that's something that I've been having to work nervous system wise. I'm just like rewiring my nervous system for slowness and just like
Mhm.
enjoying the current moment. And that takes time and it can be not that could also be hard in a different way, you know, and like also we can
Mhm.
bring ease into our lives. And I had my last session of a class that I had called Powerful this past Friday. And I was talking about that because I was saying because I feel like in my path I can be really hardcore. Like I tend to be more hardcore than the avoidance for sure. And so and I'm like me and my friend were talking about it of just how if I could push through this point, I would have. You know what I mean? So there's times where actually the medicine is not pushing through, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's true too. It's all, and that's where I also really advocate too of at some points bringing in some personalized support,
Yes.
because the thing is that, you know, general spiritual advice like Instagram spirituality, because it's painted in such broad scopes, like
Hmm.
the same situation for different people might need actually completely opposite things that
Yeah.
each person needs to do to come to center. And so
Hmm.
really having people that can help you understand, oh, you know, you think that what you should be doing is just pushing even more, but actually you've done that your whole life. So now is actually the medicine of not doing it. And I actually I
Hmm.
was telling that to one of the people that was in my class. I said, you know, I feel like you need to check in with your body before every meeting and you need to just cancel some of them. Like you need to not go to some meetings, you know, because
Yeah.
that's the medicine of where she is, you know. But
Right.
then for other people, they need a lot more stability, you know, and consistency.
Hmm.
And so it really is each person needs different things, but really treating the medicine and just our intuitive insights with a lot of respect.
Hmm.
Is, and if you're having a hard time trusting them, you know, then go into that. Why are you having a hard time trusting them? Why are you having a hard time giving them reverence? Maybe it's your internal conditioning. It's like, no, it's not safe for me to enjoy. I know plant medicine told me I should enjoy all my mornings, but my body is saying I don't feel safe doing that, you know? So then again, we have to go deeper into that. So yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, and what was, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, it was, I don't know, probably a year ago. Um, but I was at a training where there were some people from Brazil, like some shamans, and then Western people, and they were sort of talking about bridging like indigenous and Western perspectives with plant medicine. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that in more indigenous cultures where plant medicine is practiced, it's normal. Like, people go to shamans for plant medicine ceremonies, and it's like everybody in the village knows when you're going, and everybody like, and so integration is more natural because you talk about it. It's just part of life. Like it's not uh foreign at all, right? It just is. And so it's just integration is interwoven into daily life where you're going to be talking about your experience. People are going to ask, people are going to know that you sat. And so people are also going to be like sort of having that accountability built in of like, well, how are you showing up differently? What were the lessons you got? What's different? Like, right. The whole community is sort of supporting you and aware of that. Whereas in the Western world, right, we maybe will go to a plant medicine ceremony. They're a lot more available around, but you go and then it's still sort of taboo. And it's sort of like this like thing you might not talk about a lot, but you did it. And then you're just kind of hoping that things are going to change instead of um, it being just like, yeah, I did it. And then having a community to really support you and be there, help you be accountable to your life, right? It's not built in. We're so much more individualized. We're so much more siloed. And it's not normalized. And also the perspective of um, multidimensionality is not so normalized, right? So in just like in this communities, plants have spirits. We're multidimensional beings. Like that just is. Whereas plant spirits are awakening us to that. And then, right. So there's all these ways in which we don't have the supports naturally built in. And so having that, like seeking it out and making sure you have that container for yourself to have the accountability, to have the space to process, is something we actually have to be very intentional about making happen in the West.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would be, what's the expression, remiss, um if I didn't mention flower essences. So I have to also say on my dieta, I signed up in the dieta because Daniela was a guest in my school and she was talking about dietas and how it's this practice that I believe originates from the Shipibo, where they specifically will work with a plant from the Amazon that they work with for a certain period of time. And then a lot of the times those plants are not psychotropic. But then they use ayahuasca, or that's how it is on these dietas. They use ayahuasca to then help you get the medicine from this other plant. But this plant that you're consuming that the shamans select for you is like I said, not psychotropic, and you're just basically having a tea of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that plant teaches you, puts you on a journey of different lessons, and it might bring up things in your life of, oh, I see that I always feel left out, and I'm feeling it this way with this group, and I see this thing, and so it will bring those things that are on this theme to work through, and it's so interesting because already I was working with flower essences, so that's what I have to mention because I'm just finishing a practitioner program that's about energy work, but then also with mostly we work with a lot of flower essences. I have like a 72 flower essence kit, and I've been making more flower essences for my clients and stuff. But it's like you said, it's a very subtle medicine. It's not
Mm-hmm.
psychotropic, it's just the energy of
Mm-hmm.
flowers. But
Mm-hmm.
it really made this dieta really made me even more see more of the more ancient wisdom of flower
Mm-hmm.
essences because the idea is the same, is that it's taking you on a subtle journey and that it's helping you embody these things that maybe you haven't before. And that's something that I think is really beautiful about plant medicine is that we've been talking about with flower essences that it could be archetypal. It could be helping you archetypal medicine. So, for example, if you've never seen healthy love in your life, there might be a flower essence that you can take that's going to then help you kind of archetypally download those blueprints so that then you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really interesting to me to go deeper into understanding and relationship. Now I've been working with flower essences for like 4 years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but to see how, again, the idea that this medicine in our lives can be really woven in, and it doesn't need to be so intense either, and that there's a lot of beauty from that. And so even I feel like flower essences could also be something that could be helpful in integration. At least sometimes I think there's a time that like people think that you should wait. But I know for me, when I was doing ayahuasca, I was literally intensely working on the integration for like a year. So, after let's say a month or whatever time they recommend, then you could be using flower essences to start
Mm-hmm.
to help you understand how, okay, I see the theme of femininity came up, the theme of unconditional love, and so how can I start to work on these themes in my life? And so then there's ways that we could do subtle things and like subtle ceremony to help us with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think what's coming up for me that you're saying that is just speaking to, again, this theme of the reciprocity and the relationship that we have with the natural world, and that we are in the word abundance is coming up, but like there's so much abundance of support for us when we actually connect into the trees, the flowers, right? The natural world that is here, that's ready to support us. Um, and part of that is in integration. Sometimes it's in ceremony. Um, but it's about how are we showing up in that relationship? How are we showing up um, and honoring the plants, whether we're doing a flower essence, whether we're doing a dieta, um, whether we're choosing to not engage with a flower essence or a medicine, but just be present in our life for it, like on this day, like however it is, how are we choosing to show up and be in relationship um, with the seen and the unseen and with our own self um, is really the medicine of integration is just this daily, how am I showing up? What am I choosing? Um, what am I orienting to? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing that we had talked about that I think would would be good to talk about now is the container held.
Yes.
Um, so I had a story because I'm very much the kind of person who likes I don't learn by people telling me to do things and not if I don't understand why. Like if people tell me and they explain and it makes sense to me, then I'm like, okay. But I don't really take any information for granted. So, anyways, I I've been going through a lot of big changes and a lot of like things falling off in my life and change and a lot of kind of darkness of what's next. And so with that, I was like, oh, I would love to do I said ceremony, I think. But anyways, a mushroom journey, so that I can get some more clarity. And I did it with my friend, who's my old friend. Um, and I'm a healer, so I did set the space. I made intentions. But and the journey that had gone on was a pretty crazy journey. Like I felt like I was shown all this stuff that was really kind of crazy. But I was like, well, I guess it's true. Like I had talked through it with some friends. I was like, I felt like I was integrating for a few days. But anyways, this is all to say that as time was going on, because I was kind of shown different things to like, do this is the way that things will be. And some of the stuff that I was shown, they said that this is how it's going to happen pretty soon. It was like in the next few months. So luckily, because they had said that, I had realized that, things weren't adding up from my visions. And then I had found out, um, basically, I'm trying to figure out how much I want to share that's not overly personal and also like sharing other people's information. But basically, I had worked with someone I really trust, and I had her kind of tell me what was going on because I was starting to feel ungrounded. And basically, there was an entity
Hmm.
that I had interfere with that journey. Um, for different reasons. But the main point is that I think after that, as someone who's also very sensitive,
Hmm.
I had never, because I'm not really a partier. I feel like as much as I, someone can know about like alcohol, even mushrooms or anything, I know very little, you know? Um, so I had obviously heard of like, oh yeah, you should do things in ceremony, but I didn't really understand like why. And I was kind of ironic because I was like, oh look, I was able to do this, and it was like so intense, and it was didn't cost almost any money, all of that. But then after now, I'm very much like I will not do it if it's
Hmm.
not in a ceremony like
Hmm.
or with someone who can hold space that would be able to sense if there's outside spirits that are not like your guides or higher, of higher vibration to that are in this space. So that might be like a shamanic setting that you feel safe in, or but then it's a testament of doing your research of like also if even if you are going to do a ceremony. I know when I first was going through my dark night of the soul, like almost 5 years ago now, I was really desperate, had desperate energy. So I feel like I had done a plant medicine ceremony that was a little like I would not have done it. And I wish I didn't, but I was really desperate at that time. And so,
Hmm.
anyways, I wasn't in like a super discerning place at that time. But this also kind of shows that that's really important. And I also think specifically from that lesson, um, or I guess the big thing because it was really ungrounding for me. Like
Yeah.
there was a good number of months that I was ungrounded because of this
Hmm.
vision, because it was
Hmm.
showing me something so clear. So I was like, oh, I guess this is the direction I should be moving in. And I
Hmm.
made a lot of decisions accordingly. And then when things weren't
Hmm.
really adding up, I was like very confused. But then I was also going through a lot of transitions. I had like moved out of my apartment. All of my stuff, like I wasn't sure where was next. So it was very ungrounding from pretty
Hmm.
much November to now. So,
Yeah.
4 months
Yeah.
or something. And as, I advocate, a lot of the people who follow me and people I resonate with are people who have medicine to share with the world. And so our boundaries and how we take care of ourselves is so important because that time is taking away from your medicine. That
Hmm.
instability. I think I learned a lot from it,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of layers of things I learned. So it's not like I really necessarily am like, oh, I can't believe I did or whatever. I don't feel guilt about it or anything, but I feel very much like going forward, and that's why I wanted to share is
Yeah.
that to be very discerning about the space that's held for me that I really trust. Because Jessica and I were mentioned talking about this a little bit before, and I was like, oh, to me, it gives a whole other level of having someone hold a safe space for you. Because before, I feel like when people would say that, I was thinking like, oh yeah, make sure you don't run into the street and make sure, you don't have a bad trip or something, you're not screaming, whatever. But I never thought like, oh, it actually should be someone that can hold such a space that they can sense
Yes.
that there's spirits there that need to leave, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that you're not going to become super ungrounded because honestly, the level of intense stuff that I was showing, I really felt the closest to like how people can get to psychosis. Like it was
Yeah.
really intense because I was like,
Yeah.
I felt like they were showing all this stuff behind the veil and blah blah blah. And how psychosis happens, in my opinion, or a one like theory that I also think happens, not saying that every single person this happens to, but like trauma can make it so people are out of their bodies but they're also very intuitive. And then sometimes what they're
Hmm.
having is other entities speaking with
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so it's like we want to that happens and not to scare people because entities are around. We're gonna have ghosts that aren't our highest self that when you're opening up your intuition, you can open up to. So there's not really like you don't have to be so afraid of that, but at the same time, having people, again, this goes back to like support system, having someone who you can do integration with, having someone like paying for someone to hold a full ceremony for you or someone like Jessica to do it in a safe container or whatever it is so that you have that support during, you have that support after, because there is a lot that I think the average let's say American person doesn't really, we generally, even healers don't have a lot of skillfulness in these
Hmm.
other realms. Even when we're
Yeah.
we're new healers, we're still pretty new. Some of us have, but overall we're like it's becoming more, our knowledge as a whole is deepening and deepening. So really being discerning of like who do I trust that can really hold, and I'm gonna pray that this person's gonna be shown to me or this ceremony is going to be shown to me or all of this stuff because we don't want us to be sidetracked from our medicine. And at least we want so that if it does happen, that you have someone that you trust that can like help you clear it up and come back into integration of
Yeah.
your actual path. So.
There's so much that, yes. Um, yeah, everything you said is so important. And there are a couple things that stood out. So mm, just seeing, so having a safe container is just like you said, it's like there's so many layers to it, but it's not just, oh, you're not going to run out to the street. Yes, obviously we want that. But when you are in an altered state of consciousness, open. You're open to other energies. And so it is so important that when you're sitting with the medicine, you're with somebody who is aware of that, who knows how to keep the container safe. And just like you said, knows that if something is coming in, how to handle that and how to get it out. Um, it's a huge part. The other thing about that, as you were speaking, that I was like, oh, yeah, I also need to talk on is preparation for medicine ceremony, right? That people may think they're ready, but then also part of getting ready is really preparing the body, is preparing the mindset, it's preparing um, the intention. It's also sitting with all of the parts of you that have fear around it and addressing any of those fears. Um, I am really careful and I would suggest to anybody who's going to a facilitator for a ceremony, like make sure the person that you're sitting with takes their time in preparation, doesn't rush it, right? I am really careful with people. Like I will never rush a ceremony. If we'll do weeks of preparation, even if we get to the ceremony day that it was scheduled, and there's still some part of you that has resistance, has fear, that's like at a point, at a level of like, yeah, we're gonna wait until all of you is on board and ready to actually go into this journey because there's no need to rush. There's no benefit in rushing, right? It's going to impact your experience if there's part of you that's really resisting or has a lot of fear. Like that's going to impact the journey. Um, it's going to impact what sort of energy you're coming into the ceremony with. So then what you're available to and what you're open to. Um, so preparation is like the other side of the integration, right? Like really making sure that you're deeply supported as you get up to the point of actually even sitting in ceremony, then making sure it's a sacred container, that the person is skilled, that you feel really trusting and safe with them. Um, yeah, because entities are real. And when you're in an altered state of consciousness, you are more open. And that brings me to then psychosis, right? So psychosis is when you're not able to know what's you and what's not you, right? So you have entities that are talking to you, you have other spirits that are speaking, and you can no longer differentiate what's me and what's them, even not on the medicine, right? You come back to the medicine wears off and you're in your body and you're not able to differentiate what's mine and what's theirs, what's mine and what's not mine. And so that's when we get psychosis ongoing. Yeah, which is a hard place to be in. Um, yeah, so there's so much and there if you do sit in an experience and it's not ideal, you can like there's lots you can do to clear, you can clear the entities out. Like there's always more work you can do in healing to be able to have a different experience the next time. um I have a few clients who are doing integration work who sat with medicine in unhealthy ways and they had similar things where they were shown things that were not true and not helpful, um, led them down a path that was challenging, but now they're coming back. And right, and they are lessons that probably needed to be like probably needed to be learned. Could have if it could have been learned in more gentle ways, probably. Um, so it's all part of the path and all part of the journey. But yeah, having a safe container is like so, so, so important before we even get to the integration.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's something that with all of this and especially now that I'm kind of deeper and deeper in the spiritual path, I have more friends. You guys might be able to hear this Mexico like speaker outside. Can you hear that? Zoom is sometimes good
Uh-uh.
at like
Yeah, I can't.
canceling background noise,
Yeah.
but um is as with more and more friends that are super deeply intuitive, I do still think at this point, I really believe that it's helpful. Again, support systems, even having like a psychic that you really trust or something
Mhm.
that you can just talk through things with. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
funny. This is actually hilarious because after I did my ayahuasca trip, I was in Cusco after, and I had a session with the Inca Medicine School, like
Mhm.
cross checking my visions because I was like, are you sure? Because I always want to know if like because also our thoughts and our fantasies can get into our
Mhm.
visions and all this stuff. So I kind of wanted to double check things and yeah, I had some heavy stuff come up so I could tell my body didn't really want to believe it and all this stuff. And so and I think those things like just cross-checking the stuff you're getting can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And that's why it's kind of funny because I'm like, I did that time. I should have done it this other time too. That would have been helpful probably. It would have saved me like at least a few months of headache, but whatever. But the thing is, I have enough of a support system because I'm in this world that sooner. Like I wasn't gonna go super long without it, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and and also the idea that as we lighten up, and we
Mm,
feel the shadows and stuff, and our energy field lightens up in frequency from like moving trauma out of our systems, we become more attractive to these
mhm,
beings because, I don't, for whatever reason. And so it's just always like, it's again, it's not to create fear, but I also think if
mm,
that's something that you're starting to feel, again, build a support system, because as we're like, that's what plant medicine is. You're opening up
mhm,
more and more intuition, so you really want to
mhm,
have a support system that can help you be grounded through the system. And that's what these people who are from, or people who are from these villages have. They have
mhm.
support systems,
Yep.
and so it's really important. And I also will say, as far as like, it's not tweeted anymore. I substacked basically like a tweet that was about how just because someone is of a certain lineage or ancestry doesn't mean that they're spiritually embodied. And I really believe
Mhm,
that. And I think that we give a
mhm,
lot of our power away and a lot of our groundedness away by thinking that,
mhm,
So it's all to say
mhm,
that if you are looking for a ceremony, or you are looking for someone like Jessica, luckily is kind of best of both worlds because she does therapy and integration, but also is very intuitive and has the spiritual
mhm,
side, and I'm sure
mhm.
that's not that easy to find as far as with like
True.
people who hold medicine space, but
Mhm.
like on the now kind of trendy ways,
Yeah.
but feeling it out for yourself. Like, how do I feel with this person? Does this person feel safe to me? Like, do I really trust this person? And see, and ask yourself and let yourself feel into that, because there of course are a lot of people who are not are not in that place yet, for whatever reason. And so letting yourself feel that, and create that trust, I think is a good way to go about it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, there are a lot of people offering plant medicine ceremonies now, and there are all kinds of levels of safety and not safety. And so, yeah, just doing your homework, trusting yourself, um, asking questions, having conversations, trusting that sense in your gut if something feels a little off, like always say no, um, or listen to your nose. I mean, and yeah, and I think Ariel's advice of, asking your guides to show you the safe person for you, you'll find them, right? And you'll find them in ways that like you never, like, if you had planned, you wouldn't have been able to plan and figure out. But they will show up when it's right and when it's meant to. If you're asking, um, yeah,
and then I know for me too, it's like that will also be in line with finding the people who, if they're serving medicine, that they're doing it in like an ethical way.
yeah,
They're not like over harvesting the plant and causing it to die. Because again, that's also energy, So
yes,
really being having a lot of integrity in our fields of like how we're doing this stuff, and really trusting yourself that your guides and your ancestors know how you can connect. And there are
mhm,
medicines that are just more accessible, even just of how much they provide for the world, like mushrooms,
mhm,
where ayahuasca isn't a plant that grows everywhere and, is
mhm,
is being over harvested. So just being really mindful of like how we're consuming these things, but also the person who you feel like a gut yes to, they probably will know, the ethical, and they'll be able to answer the ethical things because they'll care about how the plant is treated, so
and if they
yeah, but
can't, that's a red flag.
yeah, red flag. Like if they're administering
Mhm.
medicine and they don't care enough about how the plant's treated, that's definitely a red flag,
Yes.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah. But do you feel like there's anything else you want to say, Jessica? I know it's funny because I don't think that I have the time of what time we started. So I'm like,
I think
we're not, we're trying to keep them not too long.
I think we're at about an hour.
Okay, is there anything else you
Just
want to
looking.
say?
we hit everything on my list. Let me just check in. The only thing that's coming through is that, I think we talked a lot about like the deep work and the shadow work, which is like highly important. And it also gets to be enjoyable and fun. And um, plant medicine for me is so much about connecting to like that source of unconditional love and the energy of the inner child, like being fully held and healed and nurtured. And there are challenging parts, there are challenging aspects, 100%. And um, we get to be in the light of it also. So just wanted to say that it's all of it and it's beautiful. And that even when there's challenge, this is true in integration, it's true in ceremony. Ceremony is like just practice for life. Or the last ceremony I went to, or that I partook in, there were these choice points where I could feel, okay, there's some fear coming up, and I can choose right now to go into that fear, and that's where the journey is going to go. Or I can choose what is feeling good, what's feeling safe about this that I can just kind of enjoy. Like there's that like kind of falling feeling, like, can I just let myself enjoy the ride? And it became a very enjoyable experience. And there were different choice points. And the lesson for me there was, how often am I doing that in life? Like, something challenging is coming up, something that could be hard. Am I orienting to and focusing on how terrible, how hard this is, how much of a struggle this is? Or can I orient to what pleasure is there in this, even in the struggle of being alive, of being able to show up every day, of being able to grow through these things? Like we have agency in how we're showing up and how we're engaging in ceremony and in life. And that's integration. So that's my closing thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that there's always a lot of medicine to bringing playfulness to our healing journeys, and that's something that plant medicine has a lot of. And so it's being again, it's all about like have coming into wholeness with all of the parts. If you're someone who's like really intense all the time, you actually might need a lot of the playfulness, and you'll know. And that's also where like intuition, a lot of it's like starting to know, where are these voices coming from? Like, is this voice of fear just like, my mind that's just fearful, or is it that, my intuition and my stomach knows that there's like something. And
Hmm.
so just being able to decipher between those things.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and again, like know your power to keep yourself safe. And that's all too.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this has been lovely. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours,
Yes, we can.
but but I had so much fun. And is there anything like next that you have coming up that you want to share about?
I'm really right now just doing one-on-one integration work. And if you're in the Bay Area, you can do in person um, or online. Um, yeah, I'm really just doing one-on-one stuff right now. Probably through in July, I'm going to do a plant dieta in Peru.
Ooh,
Um, so when I come back from that, I'll have some different things coming up in the second half of the year. But through going to July, I'm gonna just really be focusing on one-on-one work.
oh yay. Yeah, and for
Yeah.
me, I have well, if you see this fast enough, I'm gonna do healing for dreamers. I do it once a month, but next week I'm gonna do it for free if people want to just come and try it. And then also Dreamweavers, which is now we're going on to our third month. We still have an option to do a free month trial before you switch over to the membership price of $35 at this point, which is really good in my opinion, because there's literally monthly meetings. And this week we're doing a meeting around making your plan, like doing some planning, business planning or goal planning for the next 4 months, and being able to work on it there and then share with each other kind of your top priorities. So yeah, but this has been lovely. I always love speaking with you, Jessica. There's always so much to talk about. And
Yes,
if
same.
you guys want to follow up or if you have questions, you can always contact us. And yeah,
Yes. Thank you so much. This was great.
Bye.
Bye.